Do you ever ask the corporations to do things that you would ask ordinary human beings to do? It's like they get a pass, don't they? It's like they have the ability to amass more and more autocratic power without being subjected to the demands for civic responsibility. Do people ever ask the major corporations to take a stand against the destruction of civil liberties or civil rights in the country, or the Patriot Act, or thousands of people arrested without charges and imprisoned without attorneys? We just don't think of that because they're just business. But they are business that has intruded profoundly into our civic community, into our legislative, judicial, and executive branches. The trends are not good. The trends are not good even with an expanding GDP. The concentration of financial wealth in the top 1%, which is now equivalent to the combined financial wealth of the bottom 95% of the American people, continues unabated, virtually unchallenged. And yet, look at the assets of the people that are unused. Unlike corporations, people have the vote. Corporations have information about their misdeeds, but the people have access to a great deal of information about their misdeeds, far more than they're using in terms of democratic mobilization for accountability. The people own, collectively, the greatest wealth in the country, the commons, the Commonwealth. 1/3 of America, plus offshore. The public airways, trillions of dollars of pension funds that own large segments of the stock of New York Stock Exchange companies and NASDAQ. The people own tens and tens of billions of annual dollars devoted to research and development in healthcare and all kinds of technology that are given away free to corporations. The people own the spiritual energy that can transform the country. Yet the people are not controlling and deploying what they own. And that's the challenge of this conference, is to try to address the forest of corporate power through one path after another by people who have been active for years in these areas and are here this weekend to present their thoughts to you. It's quite clear that as long as money is dominant in elections, we have to go beyond the usual restraints which I mentioned earlier, such as regulation, antitrust, litigation, etc., without ignoring them, without abandoning their strengthening and revival, and begin concentrating in 3 areas of corporate accountability. One is ownership. Corporations, when they reach a certain size, violate the basic principles of capitalism. They are not capitalists. They are corporate capitalists. Capitalists are based on the principle that if you own something, you control it. Shareholders of giant corporations don't control at all the corporation. Capitalists are based on the principle that if you don't meet the market test, you fail. You don't go to Washington for a bailout. Big corporations go to Washington regularly for bailouts and for sustenance known as corporate welfare. We have to focus on popular ownership control of these institutions. Secondly, we have to subordinate the corporate entity constitutionally, statutorily, and in our own minds to the rights, remedies, and necessities of real human beings. The idea of basically an artificial entity becoming sovereign over our country and over our peoples, is something that should enthrall anthropologists who study animistic characteristics of trees and rocks in less developed tribal societies, and should come home and recognize the greatest manifestation of animism in world history, which is the personalization of corporations and giving them all the rights and remedies of real human beings. They have to be subordinated structurally, constitutionally, operationally, statutorily. When they were first chartered in Massachusetts in the early 1800s, the textile companies, they were chartered by the state legislatures. They were chartered as corporations on a leash. They were chartered to be our servants, not our masters. They have become, in their gargantuan status, our masters, not our servants. No corporation has ever come into existence that hasn't been created by government in our country. Investors do not create corporations. They fund them. They're created by government. They can be conditioned by a representative government with direct democracy inputs. What gives us optimism, of course, is not just the prevailing values of our society that can be deployed so they have manifestations on the daily enhanced well-being of people everywhere, including around the world. What gives us optimism is that our country is full of problems it doesn't deserve and full of solutions that it doesn't apply, such as energy, affordable housing, eradication of poverty, clean elections, clean environment. We know how to do this. We have to have the will to do it. And part of that will is reflected in the performance of the U.S. Congress. 535 human beings who put on their shoes every morning, the way we do, the pivotal turnaround structure in American society. If Congress is turned around, the White House is turned around, the federal government is turned around, the state governments get moving. Much of the focus of the remarks today should be made as to how they're going to affect Congress, which controls the purse and has the most powerful constitutional authorities of the three branches of government. Toward that end, we invited Senator Bernie Sanders to present some remarks. And he is obviously up from the grassroots in Vermont. And he couldn't make it today. He thought there was going to be an immigration debate, but that collapsed late last night. But he sent his senior policy advisor, Warren Gunnels, who's going to say a few words to us now. And I hope that he can stay around for some of your questions. Warren Gunnels.